Sirens still wailed in Meridian, but they wailed in silence now. The metal gargoyles, perched on every rooftop, sprayed jets of sterilized air instead of melody, and the billboards that once danced with neon equalizers glowed flat gray. 11 years after the Oral Silence Act, the city was a chamber with the air sucked out, a place where people mouthed greetings, but could no longer remember the pitch of their own laughter. Inside the abandoned observatory, bolted to the 14th Ward skyline, a thin man in patch leather crouched over a coffin-shaped console. His birth name was Eli Ortega, but almost no one used it anymore. On illegal frequencies, whispered through graffiti tags, he was known simply as Echo, the DJ who refused to let Meridian stay deaf. He traced a finger along the reclaimed mixer, its knobs scavenged from a pediatric dialysis machine, its crossfader carved from the slide of a trombone. Tiny green diodes glimmered like stubborn fireflies. Tonight had to be perfect. The smallest leak of sound beyond the rooftop could summon patrols and detection drones. Still, he hummed under his breath, a habit he couldn't break. Humming was barely legal. Anything under 40 decibels was tolerated, though the definition shifted when officers were in a mood. Across town, Patrol Officer Mara Klein stepped out of the precinct armory and accepted an audio-neutral weapon from the quartermaster. She checked the magazine and the small tranquilizer dart that carried a microchip, standard issue for apprehending music offenders. Mara had graduated top of her academy class because she followed rules with metronomic precision. Her father used to say she could sort screws by pitch just by hearing them roll across a table, but he never mentioned that again after the Capitol Square riot, the one blamed on a rogue marching band, the one that took her brother's life and gave the Silence Party its final votes. Mara's patrol grid intersected the 14th Ward tonight. She felt a tug of unease every time she neared the decommissioned observatory. Rumors clustered around it. Muffled rhythms, illegal gatherings, rooftop concerts. The command channel dismissed them as urban folklore, but folklore had teeth. The city's new acoustic drones, nicknamed Oreads, could triangulate a single off-key whistle from half a kilometer away. The brass had scheduled a surprise raid for next week. Tonight, Mara only needed to log routine sweeps, but she was too conscientious to leave rumors untested. Echo finished rigging his last cable to a skeletal speaker array that jigsawed up from the parapet. The cones weren't for volume. They directed precise vibration straight down into the bodies of the half-dozen listeners huddled near the skylight. Most were mill workers, a nurse, 2 teenagers. Each wore bone conduction receivers that looked like ornamental clamps on their jawlines. The setup would keep Meridian's official noise floor unchanged while letting the chosen few bathe in polyphonic contraband. He checked his wrist chronometer. 3 minutes until 0 hour. The clouds parted, revealing a coin of pale moon. The sight tingled anticipation under his ribs. Yet something also felt off, a syncopation in the night's pulse. He disabled the single flood lamp he usually kept aimed at the service hatch. Darkness would give him time to think if the Oreads came early. Echo lifted a vinyl disc from its sleeve. On the label, inked by hand, Heartbeat Mix, 148 BPM. The track used recordings of actual heart pulses layered with cello sweeps. It was the one he reserved for strangers, an invitation. Mara parked her cruiser 2 blocks south and continued on foot, boots whispering over tarred gravel. The night smelled of ozone and burnt cinnamon from a factory vent. She scanned rooftops. Nothing unusual, until her visor picked up faint thermal signatures atop the observatory. People, 6 or 7 at least, clustered around a hotter source roughly the size of a mixing console. Suspicion flickered. She tightened the strap under her chin and slipped through an alley, avoiding street lamps. A cat yowled behind her. She nearly drew her weapon, then exhaled, cursing the nerves you got when you hunted ghosts. At precisely 23:45, Echo's beat dropped, inaudible to the city, vibrantly alive under the receivers. The small audience gasped, shoulders relaxing, eyes closing as if each had been holding breath for a decade. Echo watched them. The reason he risked everything, to see people remember they were alive. His fingers danced across sliders, coaxing a tremolo into the pulse. The skyline seemed to sparkle, though lighting remained unchanged. He did not notice the service hatch open. Whisper quiet. Mara emerged, pulse rifle lowered, but ready. She caught the spectacle. Figures swaying through the night was silent. Some trick, she thought. A psychotropic, maybe. Then her visor's audio sensors caught a ghost frequency, sub-threshold. The HUD translated it visually. Waves of rhythm scrolling across her lens. Music. Real music. A memory surged. Her mother cleaning the kitchen while a dusty radio hummed an old folk song. Her brother tapping spoons on the counter as if they were drumsticks. Happiness, messy and ordinary, before the world decided happiness was a security threat. Mara's heart hammered so loudly she feared the listeners might turn, but they were bliss-locked. She could call backup. Protocol demanded it. Instead, she stepped forward, and the movement triggered Echo's peripheral vision. He spun, hands instinctively covering the console. Their gazes collided, his feral with adrenaline, hers flaring warnings from every directive she had sworn to uphold. "Don't!" she ordered, voice low but sharp. "Please," he replied. "Just listen." She shook her head, yet she noticed the track's contour in her visor, noted how it fluttered at 148 BPM, a tempo suspiciously close to her own racing pulse. The symmetry rattled her composure. Echo lifted an ear cup off his right ear and held it toward her, a forbidden invitation. Mara shouldered her rifle, but the muzzle dipped by a centimeter. She took one half step forward, leaned just enough for the foam pad to graze her jaw. Sound spilled in, a cello pouring over a landscape of heartbeats, each thump swelling like a tide. Warmth flooded her chest, bittersweet like first snow you know will melt by morning. She jerked back as if shocked. "Cut it! Now!" He hesitated, then slid the fader. Silence, the legal kind, blanketed them. The listeners under the skylight groaned, startled awake from beauty. "Your name," Mara demanded. "Echo, real name." He smiled. "Names matter less than frequencies." She almost cuffed him for defiance, but noticed fear swimming behind his bravado. He was prepared to face prison, maybe worse, yet still he'd risked inviting her to share the sound. That vulnerability pried at her. "You know the penalty," she said softer. "I know." Behind them, an Orid drone buzzed overhead, searchlights splaying across warehouses 3 blocks east. Mara's dispatch channel crackled. "All units, audio anomaly grid 13D. Units converge." The drone wasn't pinpointing them, yet. She scrolled data. The anomaly radius bloomed close. She toggled her mic. "Unit Klein reporting. No anomalies detected in 14th Ward. I'll extend patrol." Her voice trembled, but she masked it under formal cadence. "Negative, Klein," the operator replied. "OREADs show heat deviations. Possible group activity." She cursed silently. "Copy. Investigating." She closed the channel, drew a deep breath, then met Echo's question inside his stare. "Disperse," she ordered the listeners. "Use the west fire ladder and go home, quietly." They obeyed, stunned. Echo packed cables with frantic efficiency. Mara helped, yanking cords, coiling them tight like evidence despite knowing she might never log it. When the deck was bare, she pointed at him. "I'll walk you out." What happens after that? After that, she holstered her rifle. I haven't decided. They climbed down separate ladders, but emerged onto the same deserted street. The Oread turned north, fooled by misreported coordinates. At his squat, a gutted shipping container near the river, Echo offered her a battered MP3 player. For when the silence gets too loud, he said. She shouldn't have, but she slipped it inside a uniform pocket. If anyone hears about this, they won't from me. Mara left, boots echoing over steel grates, heart drumming the tempo she'd just tasted. Over the next 2 weeks, she found excuses to patrol near the observatory. Officially, she was mapping blind spots for drone sweeps. Off the record, she was learning the shapes of illegal joy. Echo greeted her each time with a new track, always through one ear cup, half the sound, as if romance were something you shared side by side instead of face to face. They talked between mixes. She told him her brother's name was Felix, that the riot had started when a brass band refused to yield the street during a political march. Echo told her his mother used to play tango records and spin him around the kitchen until they were both dizzy. The anecdotes felt like notes of a larger composition neither had heard yet. One night, he let her put both hands on the mixer. She fumbled, knocking gain knobs, but he guided her wrists. 2 counts before the drop. Breathe in, he whispered. She did, and when the bass line landed, she felt it not in her ears, but in the soles of her feet, traveling up bone like a private resurrection. When they finally kissed, it was during a test of total silence. No track loaded, no heartbeat sample, just city wind. Their lips met shyly, the hush between them louder than any anthem. Mara felt rules collapse, like towers built of cheap quarry stone. She still wore her uniform each night, but the uniform had stopped wearing her. Unfortunately, Meridian's hierarchy did not sleep. Commander Jonas Rourke, her precinct superior, had noticed GPS loops in her patrol logs, the way her cruiser idled near the observatory longer than protocols allowed. Rourke was a man carved from regulations. He'd lost his hearing in one ear during the last legal rock concert, and he considered that partial deafness a badge of patriotism. He summoned Mara into his office, walls lined with confiscated instruments locked behind glass. "Officer Klein," he said, hands folded, "you've been diligent, yet your recent patterns trouble me." He produced a printout. Times, coordinates, drone reports she'd edited. Mara kept her gaze steady. "I believe the anomaly's false positives, sir." "I respect discretion," Rourke said, "but the Directorate plans a citywide sweep. They've upgraded the OREADs to pick up bone conduction leaks. Anything over 12 participants is an arrest on site. I want you on lead detail. Clean slate, Klein. Show me you're still one of us." She saluted, oath jabbing like a fishhook in her chest. That night, she met Echo outside the observatory, rain hissing off rusted ducks. "They're coming," she said. "New drones Friday. If you're still here, we'll move." He glanced at her, reading the residual terror. "But running only buys nights. You know that. Then what? Surrender?" "Broadcast." She frowned. "Impossible. Every frequency is shielded." "Not the Civil Defense Siren Network," Echo countered. "It's analog, decades old. We hijacked the central relay at Zenith Tower. One push and the whole city hears whatever we feed it. And we get executed on live auditorium feed." He touched her cheek. "Or we set them free." A storm system loomed Friday, forecast to saturate the airwaves with static. Perfect cover. Mara smuggled him a magnetic keyring and passcodes to Zenith maintenance lifts. He slipped her a thumb drive labeled Last Symphony. Inside were compiled tracks, lullabies, protest chants, love songs, sliced and stitched into 20 minutes of escalating euphoria. The final seconds were just heartbeats, recorded at normal human tempo. They met at dusk, clouds writhed like bruises. From a distance, Zenith Tower resembled a conductor's baton stabbing the heavens. They climbed service scaffolds, silently passing hazard signs. In her pocket, Mara carried a standard-issue tranquilizer pistol. But tonight, it felt heavier than any rifle. Inside the relay room, dusty consoles blinked amber. Echo patched his portable mixer to the analog input. LEDs blossomed. He peered at Mara. "Ready?" She nodded, though sweat trickled under her collar. The elevator dinged behind them. Doors parted. Commander Rourke strode out with 4 officers, sidearms drawn. "Step away, Klein." Mara raised her tranquilizer, leveling it at the squad, an act of mutiny that sucked the breath from her lungs. "Nobody fires," she warned. Rourke's gaze flicked to Echo. "So, this is the virus corrupting my officer." Echo lifted the remote that would trigger the relay. "Listen before you decide what's corrupt." "I don't intend to," Rourke began, but Echo pressed a key. One bar of music unfurled into the room, a woman's voice humming a lullaby, fragile as candlelight. Rourke's posture broke, his gun lowered. "Eva," he whispered, his dead wife's name. Echo hadn't known the lullaby belonged to her. Chance had chosen it from public archives. Yet the sound cracked Rourke's armor. The other officers wavered, unsettled by seeing their commander cry. Mara seized the moment, locking the main lever in broadcast mode. Siren horns across Meridian clicked alive. Instead of the monthly test tone, they exhaled a gentle chord, a major seventh that stretched like dawn. It flew through alleys, skimmed riverfront tenements, seeped under doors. People looked up from screens, from sorrow, from sedation. Then the beat landed, low, insistent, echoing the pulse in every wrist and neck. Melodies wove through it, folk guitars, brass bands, symphony strings, children shouting rhymes. For 20 minutes the city hummed. Streetlight bulbs pulsed in sympathy. Birds unused to song flitted in frantic circles. Widows clutched photos. Teenagers danced on balconies they'd never stepped onto before. Engineers in data centers shut their eyes and wept. No one gave orders to shut it down. The directorate's switchboards overloaded with calls, half demanding arrests, half sobbing thanks. Inside Zenith, Rourke sank to his knees. When the heartbeats faded into final silence, it was a full 60 seconds before anyone breathed. Echo powered off the mixer. Boots scuffed as officers closed in. Mara braced, ready for cuffs, guns, whatever came. But Rourke stood first, holstering his weapon. He looked at Mara, then Echo, and said only, "Go!" "Sir?" one officer gasped. "File status, equipment malfunction," Rourke ordered. "No arrests." He turned away before they could see his second tier. Echo took Mara's hand. They fled into stairwells, onto fire escapes, into the reborn night. Within days, impromptu choirs gathered in markets. Someone spray-painted "Listen" on official statues. The directorate attempted curfews, but the populace answered with guitars hammered together from shipping pallets. Rourke submitted early retirement papers and was last seen carrying his wife's old phonograph to a repair shop. 3 months later, the Oral Silence Act was repealed. Meridian planned its first legal festival at the riverfront. Counselors argued over decibel caps. Nobody cared. On the evening before the festival, Echo and Mara returned to the observatory. Speakers, real speakers, loomed over the parapet, cables neatly routed, no need for camouflage. Below, vendors assembled stages. String lights pixelated the dusk. Echo cued a track. Music blossomed outward, unconcerned with law. Mara leaned against him. Uniform traded for a simple jacket. Badge removed but kept in a pocket as reminder of the thin line between obedience and oppression. "What will you play tomorrow?" she asked. A new mix, he said. Starts with a single heartbeat, then another, then a city's. She smiled, listening to the wind push minor scales through distant alleys. Sounds like a good tempo. Echo kissed her forehead. Around them, Meridian exhaled, no longer holding breath. Speakers vibrated, starlight flickered, and somewhere drums began, mapping the ancient route from ear to rib cage. They stood together on the rooftop, sharing everything that once had to be stolen: music, sky, and the steady, gloriously unlicensed beats of the heart.